Our last but not least activities are Miss Yuhanee Jehka. She also used to work in the camp, and right now she has a very popular lawyer that working for the urban refugee for ages. So she worked for Asylum Access Thailand in both for like oversee from the RSD perspective and also the protection. And she going to cover a very big issue for the national screening mechanism. Once again, I would like to state that this is still on drafting. It's nothing confirmed or concrete yet. So I think some very specific question, maybe she cannot answer it yet because of nothing is final, but I think we can see the trend and can see like what are the process now, and we can have hope for that. So I would like to give the stage to Miss Yuhanee ka.
Thank you so much, Nord, and thank you so much for BUCC to have a very nice event for today, and would like to say happy World Refugee Day for everyone. So my name is Yuhanee. I am a legal solution manager right now working for Asylum Access Thailand. And yes, of course, like according to the topic that I will talk to you guys today is about national screening mechanism. So actually, many of you hear about this and hear that is like it will launch very soon, and at the end of last year finally it's launched, and now is the time for like implementation. But before I go to talk through detail, I would like to give you a little bit of like the structure of what I would like to talk today. So first of all, we'd like to talk about like the general information of the national screening mechanism. Second is about a little bit more detail about the process of the screening mechanism that the refugee will face. And then the last is about talking about if when you get recognized, when you get grant the protected person status by the Thai government, what kind of right that you will get from like the state, like Thailand protection. So this is a three key things that I would like to talk to you. And then of course, final section, we can talk about like questions that you have. But as Nuchii just mentioned, most of even though the draft is already approved and established, and the law is like this Monday will be the day that the law will implement fully. But about the detail, about how to implement, how to register, or all detail is still on the process for drafting. So I would like to apologize if some question I cannot answer, but I will try to answer as much as I know. Okay, so first of all, talking about this regulation, I would like to give you some background. The background of this is because of in 2016, there is the leaders, there is a Obama summit in New York, and this summit is focused on the refugees. And on that time, our Prime Minister Prayut go to that summit, and he pledged and I mean like give some announce that Thailand will consider on the refugees in Thailand and consider on trying to do something for like provide some protection to the refugee. Then after that they are like on the process for drafting, here from the comment. And then in 2019, just 24 February 2019, the Thai government launched the one regulation names the regulation of Prime Minister Office regarding to screening of alien entering into the kingdom who are unable to return to the country of origin. So this is the name of the regulation. And as I mentioned, this is a regulation is under the Prime Minister Office. it's still a very, very small law. If you know, if you aware, the law have some kind of hierarchy of the law. The biggest law is institution, and then under institution might be like some kind of act, penal code, or those type of things. It's a kind of law, but this regulation is a very, very small law who are like, is a very low level of the hierarchy of the law. This have a meaning that I try to say is this kind of law is sometimes is easy to change or easy to cancel as well. So we have to be aware on this as well. According to this, I would like to make you understand about this is the Thailand, we never recognize, we never ratify the Refugee Convention. And according to this regulation, there are no refugee, the word refugee in this regulation. There are nothing mentioned about like the refugee law, or anything about refugee international law. So I would say like this law is very like like an internal law from Thailand, and the aim of this law is this law would like to provide some kind of protection to the person who already determined by the Thai government and see like this person is have a fit with the definition of the protected person. This is something that I will talk to you later. So this law is not refugee law, not asylum system, but it is a protections that the government would like to give to the person who passed the screenings. For the person who would like to get a recognized refugee status, maybe you need to thinking about like to go to see the organization or UNHCR who like provide you this kind of status, but not with the NSM. So this is the overall of the NSM, the national screening mechanism. And another part, I would like to talk a little bit on the detail of the NSM. So according to the regulation, there are 5 parts of the regulation. First is about the committee. This regulation talking a lot about the committee who will go to determine the individual who apply for seek the protected person status. There are at least 8 committee members who come from the government side, and there are 4 members who come from the private side, not the government, but private, maybe from the institution, NGO, or the university. So these 4 persons can be the one who have more expert on migrant issues and also on refugee issues. And for the process of this law, there are like 2 process, let's say. First is about pre-screening process. So when you are registered, when you register to this screening process, you have to go through the pre-screening process first, which is mean that you need to meet with the first committee who will determine that the reason that you give to them is fit with the definition, fit with the criteria that they set for you to be able to apply for determine to get the protected person status or not. In this process, I don't know what is gonna happen. As I said, like for the detail, we don't know yet what is gonna happen for like in very detail of the process. But the outcome of this process, when you register, when you go through the pre-screening, the first committee will determine, and then they will issue you to outcome. First is yes, you fit with this kind of criteria, and you allow to submit for a screening process to get the protected person status. And the second outcome is no, you are not fit with this criteria, with this definition. And for this, in the regulation, they said very clear that you can appeal for this. Yes, and if you appeal, they also have to answer, right, yes or no. And if no, it means like you cannot apply for the committee to consider your case to be protected under this law. Before I go to the second process, which is called the screening process, I would like to give you a definition of the protected person that I talk a lot about this. So the meaning of the protected person is mean any alien who entry into or reside within the country and is unable or unwilling to return to the country of such person origin due to a reasonable cause that such a person will suffer danger due to the persecution as determined by the committees. So in this definition, you can see that they use the word persecution, which is something that might be linked with the word that in the Refugee Convention, when we would like to determine some person who like should get the recognized refugee status or not, we use word like persecution. But for the persecution in this regulation, they have a clause say that the persecution will be determined by the committee. So we never know that the definition of the persecution according to this regulation will be the same meaning of the persecution in the refugee law or not. So this is a thing that you need to understand as well. And then, okay, let's go back to the process. When you pass the pre-screening process, mean you allow to register, you allow to be screened by the committee, then you file the application, and then the committee will determine that according to your story, according to the evidence that you submit, this thing is fit with what the Thai government said for grant the protected person status or not. And the outcome will be two way as well. The first way is yes, they agree that you should grant the protected person status, and they grant you status. Or no, they are not agree that you are fit with this definition, with this criteria, and they reject your case. So when they reject your case in the screening process, you don't have a right for appeal. This is different from UNHCR process, which is like if UNHCR reject you at the beginning, at the first time, you have a right for appeal. But if for NSM process, if the committee reject you in the screening process, you don't have right to appeal. Understand? So pre-screening process, you have right to appeal. But if you go through the screening process, you don't have right to appeal. This is something that I would like to tell you. And you might, like some of you might want to know about like, okay, if I go through this process, if I pass the pre-screening and I go to screening process and then I was granted the protected person status, what is the rights that the Thai government will give to you? So first is the right to delay or no, the right to not deportation. This is indicate, this right is indicated in the regulation. You will say, I will say, once you pass the pre-screening process and you are waiting for screening process, on that time you will be called a person under screening. So the right for not deportation is applied to you since that time. So the Thai government will not deport you since that time. And if you be granted the protected person status, so they will not deport you. But if you did not get the protected person status, that is, you have to go through the immigration process, and deportation might be one risk that you might file as well. Okay, the second thing is the Thai government indicate in the regulation say that if you grant for protected person and once you feel like you feel safe enough and you would like to return to your country because you feel that if you return it's safe for you, the Thai government say that they will support, they will assist you to voluntarily return to your countries. And the third right is about the right to stay, the right to temporary stay in Thailand. So when I say temporary, I don't know how long. This is something that the government need to give more information about how long they will allow the protected person to stay in Thailand. And to stay in Thailand, in the regulation, they say very clear that is stay under some circumstance or permission or some kind of condition that can set up by the committee or by the government. I don't know. Just would like to give you more information about this. It's about right to stay. Right to stay is not come from the regulation. The regulation say yes, you may have right to stay, but since I mentioned this regulation is very small law, but to allow persons to stay in Thailand should be some law that bigger than this regulation. Now I mentioned about Immigration Acts. The Immigration Act in the article, I think Article 17 mentioned that the Thai government, the cabinet, able to issue some special order to say this particular group of aliens able to stay in Thailand. So to make right to stay that mentioned in this regulation happen, that means the cabinet have to issue some special order for those persons who grant the protected person status able to stay in Thailand. So this is some kind of right that is indicated in the regulation. And another right that indicate in the regulation is right to education for children. But I will say actually the education, like Thailand have the policy called education for all. So it should not just only Thai children, but this policy should apply to everyone, include refugee children or include the children who don't have any document. But this regulation try to say again, make sure again that those protected person who are children will get this right. And the last thing that they mentioned is right to access to healthcare. That's it. They said just right to access to healthcare, but I don't know according to the practice how they will make it. They will do through the social insurance, like the migrant worker that they allow to do a social insurance. I don't know about this. We need to wait until the Thai government give more information regarding to this. And you can notice that actually right they are no right to work in this regulation. We don't know that what is happen if the refugee was granted the protected person and they decide to stay in Thailand, but if they don't have right to work, you know about this. It's a very big issue how people will stay without financial support, how people should stay without income. So this is very important that I also would like to say that the Thai government have to thinking about this. If the government don't want to say like, oh, have a refugee is a burden, the government have to give like food, like money to the refugee. If you don't want to say that, you should allow refugee to work. You should allow refugee to able to do the work and get an income with the fair income and fair process, fair law for the for the labor law. So this is all from me according to this, and welcome for the much